the big one is being very open-minded. Like I said, not everything is going to fit every single producer. And I can tell you, I have learned a lot from producers that have been in the business, or at least their ranch has been in the business for 100 years. And there's a reason they're sustainable and that they keep, going year after year. And so I think that's the big one, is be willing to learn and open-minded from those that have been there before you, and they understand the industry.
Welcome to the Feed Science Podcast Show. I am Bob Oitker, and we are here today to talk to Megan about beef nutrition. Megan, I'd ask you to introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm Megan Van Emon. I'm an extension beef cattle specialist with Montana State University, and been there 10 years, but originally grew up here in the Midwest, actually where I'm recording from right now in Indiana.
Indiana. Okay. I'm in Illinois. We're close together.
Yep.
Okay. Well, today we're going to talk about some beef nutrition. I think we're going to start out with feed sampling. Is that correct?
But wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah. Let's talk about feed sampling.
Yeah. So I would say it's probably one of the cheapest methods of making sure you're feeding your cows, calves. I mean, I guess whatever part of the beef operations you're in. To be able to know what you're feeding your animals and meeting those nutritional needs. And so it's one of those kind of things that I typically recommend year in, year out, no matter what you're feeding. And like I said, it can be the cheapest option. You can go $20 and you get a good feed test, and we can really help you make a better ration for some of your animals.
What's the best way to go about developing a program, let's say for a guy who doesn't know anything about sampling feed, the lab, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different commercial, certified labs out there for testing your feeds. I would say kind of the big ones that we use, or that are pretty typical, are like Midwest Labs, Ward Laboratories, and there's several others. They can be within the state that you're located in as well. I just like to see a good feed sample and making sure you're getting a representative sample of whatever you're trying to feed. It's one thing if you're feeding some corn, and that typically doesn't change nutrient analysis wise, even across the country. Maybe a little bit here and there, but big ones I always recommend are like your hays, and any of the, maybe some alternative feeds that you could be getting, like distillers grains, even from a commercial ethanol plant. Just because those can vary between how that ethanol process is being done, whether it's, you still have a high fat product or a lower fat product where they're trying to get as much out of that corn for ethanol as possible, things like that. But honestly, I think just a good feed sample and making sure getting that representative sample, or if you're getting two different lots of samples in, and testing each of those individually.
Commercial mills and integrators often face challenges in managing moisture levels, leading to pellet quality challenges, reduced efficiency and productivity, feed wastage, and nutrient segregation. Proper moisture penetration and retention within feed particles during conditioning and pressing acts as a heat conduit, allowing for uniform heat transfer throughout the meal. This uniform distribution of heat improves starch gelatinization and increases pellet quality and durability. Milling efficiency aids such as MaxiMill facilitate moisture absorption and retention within pellet feeds and help producers mitigate many of these commonly observed pellet appearance deviations. Contact a clean feed expert today to learn more about how MaxiMill supports pellet quality.
And I guess where's a good place to get some direction on recommendations for what we should be testing for, and what we want to provide a cow and a calf?
So, the first thing I'm going to tell you to probably talk to is your local extension agent, especially their agriculture agent, because they probably have a little bit more local knowledge on what's being fed in the county there, or I guess in the region within the state, depending on the extension. I don't know how best to say it, like the extension development maybe that they have, because I know some states have gone to more regional systems. But also you can talk to your agriculture consultants, your feed elevators, things like that. They're going to, have some of that knowledge of what to test for. But usually I recommend just starting with a basic, either a forage quality test, which will get you your dry matter, your protein, your energies, for those hays. And if you're looking at some alternative ingredients, maybe looking at a little bit more detailed analysis, especially depending on what type it is, on if we need to get some mineral analysis conducted or anything like that to see if there's any differences there, to better meet the needs of those cows. And then your local extension agent or like a nutritionist can also help you set up and determine how that feed can be used to meet the needs of your animals.
And so you could get a lot of that from a commercial feed supplier, right? For people who are purchasing some cattle feed.
Yep, definitely. Usually they'll have an analysis right there for you, especially if you're looking at commercial supplements and things like that. They're required to have those feed tags and everything. One thing I do recommend is, if it's unknown, is getting the energy done on some of those commercial supplements, because a lot of times that's not provided. Depending on I'm thinking more like probably along the lines of like lick tubs and stuff like that. But a lot of those commercial supplements, or even just grain elevators in general, are going to have those nutrient analyses. And like I said, like something like corn, soybean meal, stuff like that doesn't change all that much. So it might be a little bit older analysis, but they've definitely had that over the years and kind of created a good average of what their product is.
Should a beef producer be concerned about toxin levels? And we use a lot of DDGs in the swine industry, and we monitor toxin levels. Are you testing for that kind of thing in the beef side?
I would say here and there, depending on the product that we're feeding and depending on the weather on which it was grown. Not so much, unless I guess we typically have a concern. Now, if we have, some wet hay that gets put up, I mean, it's not quite as common in the western part of the United States where I'm typically located, compared to here in the Midwest where, it's hot, humid, and all throughout haying season and everything. But we get those rained on hays, and there could be some mold development in there. And so definitely considering a mycotoxin analysis. But one thing I do recommend, at least in Montana, if we're considering that, is finding a lab that can identify the mold species that might be prevalent in those feeds, because mycotoxin analysis is pretty expensive, depending on the lab you go with. But overall, if you get the whole, I would say, screening, it can be $200 to $300, which definitely a lot more expensive than just a general analysis. But it can also mean a lot, especially with cattle prices right now, on whether or not you might lose some cows or something. So there's that. And then I would say we ran into a little bit of ergot issues here. It's probably been 7-8 years ago on the western side of the United States where I'm at, just because we did get a lot of rain and moisture during that peak growth and seed production in wheat. So ergot can potentially be another toxin you might want to be testing for.
What kind of things, if I'm new at this, what kind of things would you say you for sure need to check these 3 or 4 items? You got a hit list?
Oh goodness. Wow, that's a pretty deep question. It kind of depends on your operation and
okay.
The big one, I think, not just feed analysis, but how much feed do you have available? And that can mean whether or not you have pasture availability, or, for grazing, or you have to purchase all your feed. It kind of depends on where you're located at and what resources you have available. I think that's the number one, is what type of resource availability do you have in your area to be able to be successful in your operation. And that doesn't cow-calf, feedlot, whatever you're doing. Because I don't know about you, but some areas there's a lot more available resources than there are in other areas, and also the cost of what it's going to cost you to raise that product, whatever it may be. That's the big one now, right? Is the cost of everything has gone up, and what are those input costs for those animals? But I think also being realistic and what to expect, and visiting with local experts, whether it's extension service or your feed elevator or anything like that, to help you gain more knowledge in what you're doing.
Okay. And do you do body condition scoring and that kind of things on cows?
Mhm.
Similar to what we would do with sows. Is that a thing for you guys?
Yes, yeah, we do a body condition. I guess I've never really done body condition scoring on pigs. Most of the pigs I encounter are 4-H pigs for the 4-H fair. So, and some of them are, definitely those high body condition scores, and some are a little more leaner. But yeah, we do body condition. I think that's a great tool to use no matter what species. Beef cattle are a little different. I would say compared to, like, let's say, dairy cattle, and sheep, is that our scales on a 1 to 9 scale, 9 being severely obese, 1 being extremely emaciated. And we try to shoot for that 5 to 6 all year round. Gives us good body condition. Their nutritional needs are being met, and they should be able to raise a calf every year if with maintaining that body condition. So we do that, and I think that's an excellent tool that producers can use, as they move forward and feed their animals.
What kind of new things are there? New things going on in the cattle industry? I mean, are you focusing on feed conversion or cost per pound of gain, that kind of stuff on the finish side?
Well, that's always the big one, right? Is being more efficient, and having those cattle that can utilize less amount of feeds and producing the same amount of product, which I would say the beef cattle industry, well, in most of our industries, as we learn more about each species, we become a little bit more knowledgeable, and we get a little bit more efficient in how to feed those animals better and create a great product. And so that's always, I think, in the, even if it's not in the forefront, it's always in the back of your mind of how those animals are gaining, right? So keeping them healthy, managing them well from, newborn calf stage to all the way to the finished product, or if you're developing those females for replacements and making sure they're properly managed and they remain healthy, can definitely produce a much better product. And so, animal welfare, animal care is definitely at the forefront of that. That's kind of on the feedlot side, as I would say we always are. Probably new, and it might not be new in the sense for like our agronomy folks, those raising crops, is GPS technology. That's kind of the big hot topic right now with beef cattle grazing, is GPS collars and virtual fencing. How can we better manage those pastures and move those cattle? And thinking about like Montana, you might have between 1,000 to 10,000 acre pasture or a forest allotment or something like that, and how you can more effectively manage that grazing to make sure we're utilizing that pasture optimally to get the best nutrition, but also to help reduce wildfire loads or things like that. And we can use virtual fencing for that and move those around, and without having to worry about a lot of extra fencing cost either. So I would say that's, I guess maybe the hot topic term is precision agriculture, which is pretty new to the livestock side of things, especially grazing animals, but probably not as much on the agronomy side of things.
Living here in central Illinois, I'm around a lot of cow-calf operations, but not many finishing operations, certainly of any size. Is there still a good number of the smaller cow-calf guys in the country, the number of farmers?
It always seems to maybe decline a little bit every year. What is it now? Less than 2% of the population's involved in agriculture in general, and even fewer of that in cattle operations. But I think, at least in Montana, we've had several more small acreage farms with a few cows pop up as people move into the state, or there isn't a lot of room for younger folks on some of those ranches, depending on how that's being managed. And so we've had a few small acreage farms, but I think there's always going to be room for those small acreage producers. And even though sometimes we're told that it's just the big guys out there and they're the ones kind of running everything, but nothing beats kind of having that local producer down the road and getting that product straight from them, whether it's milk or a meat product or something like that. It doesn't even have to be cattle; it can be swine, sheep, goats, whatever you're looking for. So I'd like to think maybe one of the things, I guess, I don't want to say positive to come out of the pandemic, but a lot of folks really started looking more into how to be more sustainable without using grocery stores for everything. So maybe that's a positive that came out of that. More folks are looking into, having a smaller farm with a few animals for themselves and raising their own products.
Yeah, that sounds good. And it seems like for cattle anyway, maybe it's a little easier to start small and grow in cattle with some ground and a few cows and calves, rather it might be, some of the bigger stuff that's more condensed, like swine or chickens, that kind of thing.
So, yeah, it seems like I have a lot of friends now that
can young people
backyard chickens and stuff like that. So, they're pretty, I don't want to say self-handling, but, chickens, fairly easy. But yeah, swine's a little bit more of a difficult product, I would think, to have a small acreage. But, I will say it seems like the population of swine in Montana doubles every summer as 4-H kids have their product and everything, and raise their couple head out behind the house, and not necessarily in town. I'm not sure how much I'd want to smell pigs in town, because I decided very early on in my career swine were not my thing. I did not want to smell like pigs all the time. So
I understand that. Okay. So have we missed anything that you'd like to share with us about?
They always ask me that question, and I always think like I should come up with a bullet point or two of like, this is the end message, and I never seem to be able to come up, because it seems like we cover most everything. So
yeah, I'm the same way. But sometimes I've got the experience thing where I say, hey, we need to do this, we need to do that. Just any advice you have, and if you don't, that's fine.
I guess one thing, I know we kind of touched on it a little bit, was just, if you're first starting out, like I said, don't be afraid to ask a lot of questions. I do a lot of producer type meetings and nobody ever wants to raise their hand. I mean, I can be the same way too. I don't want to raise my hand either. But if you want that knowledge, don't be afraid to ask those questions and go to your local experts about it, whether it's the feed elevator, extension service, next door neighbor and everything, but also realizing that what one person doesn't necessarily fit maybe what you're trying to do, and being willing to, I guess, explore other options. I just, it's easy for me to say that because I don't have to pay for it, but I think also just being realistic in those goals and what you're trying to do as a producer, whether you're raising 1,000 head or you're raising 5, just kind of knowing what those goals are and knowing how much it's going to cost to feed those animals and everything. So I think that's the hardest part, is knowing what it's going to cost us to feed those animals. Because a beef cow, let's say 1,400 pounds, she's going to eat 35, 40 pounds of feed every day. So that's a lot of feed even for one animal. So just kind of knowing that and being prepared. And I think one of the big things too, here in the Midwest, where, we can have, like, this last winter wasn't that bad. I should say same with us out in Montana too, but also being realistic and knowing how that weather's going to impact everything. And I wish I could say I knew what the weather was going to do. I mean, I think we all do, but just so, you're kind of better prepared and having that shelter and everything. So
So what's your favorite beef nutrition book or resource?
Oh goodness. I have a couple that I tend to use pretty regularly. One is the nutritional requirements of beef cattle. And then the other one that I tend to use is actually out of Oklahoma State. It's their, I think it's just called the Beef Cattle Handbook. Um, and those are probably my top two resources that I look at, you know, at least every week, looking
Okay.
for some
Yep.
information.
All right. Second question is, what's your favorite book or resource outside of agriculture?
I read a book and it's on leadership, and and now I can't think of the name of it. Um, it's written by a former Navy SEAL, and dang, I'd have to look that up. I don't remember what the name of it was. The name of the guy is Jocko something. But it's all about extreme ownership and, and owning everything you have control of. And I really think that resonated with me, in accepting all the responsibility and ownership of what I do and how I interact with producers and things.
Okay. And the last question is, in your opinion, what sets successful beef nutrition professionals apart from those that are not?
Oh, wow. Geez, I didn't realize we were going to get so deep here. Um, I would think the big one is being very open-minded. Like I said, not everything is going to fit every single producer. And I can tell you, I have learned a lot from producers that have been in the business, or at least their ranch has been in the business for 100 years. And there's a reason they're sustainable and that they keep, going year after year. And so I think that's the big one, is be willing to learn and open-minded from those that have been there before you, and they understand the industry. And there's nothing wrong with asking them questions and getting what, they think is being successful too.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, that concludes another episode of the Feed Science Podcast Show. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And if you enjoyed yourself, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and you'll get future episodes. Also, if you'd leave a review, we'd appreciate that. Until next time, Bob signing off. Have a great day and God bless.